Manua, Sean Wright-Phillips and Natalie.
Welcome back to Matchday Live. So it is 2-0 at half-time. City lead in their first away game of this Champions League season. I'm still joined by Sean and by Nedum, and you can see some of the stats there on the big screen as well. So 76% possession for City. At one point in that first half, it was up as high as 82% for City. Attempts on target, 5 for City, 14 total. Just the one, as you can see there, from Bratislava. Top passes in the game is going to shock nobody there, that the top 5 are all Manchester City players there. Well, I think that'll be City's top 5, won't it? Yes, and then the other side is Bratislava's top 5. But look at the differences there. Stones, 98%, whereas Takic, 67%. And the distances run. Matheus Nunes putting the shift in this evening. 6 kilometres for him already, 5.8 for Gundogan and 5.8 for Foden as well. There's some work being put in there in the midfield area. So City leading 2-0. Both goals that came in the first 15 minutes. And I have to admit, Sean, at 15 minutes, I thought this might have been 6-0 by half-time.
Yeah, it did look like that. I think there was a little reality check in many ways, a close call. I think me and Nedum hit on it before the game, where they may get one chance on the counter-attack and you have to be clinical. That he was unlucky, did the right things in terms of hitting it across the face of the goal, and it just went wide. And in many ways, that kind of kicked us into gear. And once we're in that gear, things like that happen, and it could have been a lot more. We've hit the woodwork 3 times. Pretty much all that possession that everybody's just seen has been pretty much in their final third to the midfield area. So it's not an easy place to keep the ball the way City have kept it, but they're doing really well, and I'm looking forward to seeing the second half and more efforts ongoing. It's great to see Phil Foden on the score sheet, obviously coming back from his virus, getting the minutes under his belt, and as you said, the stats that he's running stats are up there for the first half, so it shows you how much he's moving around in those midfielder areas, trying to find those pockets of space.
Absolutely great to see Phil on the scoreline with the second, and great to see Ilkay Gundogan on the scoreline with the first, although it was a wicked deflection.
Well, it was only a slight deflection, you know what I mean? It wasn't too big, was it? But yeah, you take those. That was going on target, so it will be given to him, and it's good to see him chipping in with that goal. And I'd like to think they'll just get a feel for it now and start bagging a few more between now and the end of the season.
Oh, please.
Absolutely.
Yes, that would be lovely, getting Ilkay Gundogan in the form he was a couple of seasons ago with the big goals. So he got the first, and as Sean said, a goal for Phil Foden for City's second today. They also had 7 corners in that first half. Are you worried at all that they scored just 2?
Worried?
Yeah.
No, I'm not worried, because the way the football works, you're not going to score every chance anyway. I think I'm more impressed by the amount of opportunities that they've created, especially against the side who are in a low block as such. So I'm not worried at all, and I think realistically the problem now lies, in my opinion, with Bratislava, because does the manager say at half-time for them, like, it's okay, keep doing what you're doing, because they're struggling that way? Or does he say, we're going to try and be more attacking? Because if they decide to do that, then I think City get more chances and bigger chances. So they're in a tough position, but City are patient, they're moving the ball well overall, on a pitch that isn't perfect, as myself and Sean saw. So I'm not concerned that it's 2. Listen, would you rather it was none?
No, I'd rather it was 6, though.
Well, now you're just being greedy. I think being 2-0 up away from home in the Champions League at half-time is perfectly fine, especially with the other chances they've created so far. And I think there'll be players on that pitch who are very hungry to get on the score sheet, as we've seen with the, say, 3 attempts on the post crossbar as well.
Definitely happy with it at half-time, but it still feels like a dangerous scoreline.
I would say yes if the game was more even, but it doesn't feel that way at this moment in time. And obviously for football, anything could happen, but so far, Bratislava have had 1 shot.
Off target, yeah.
And I think Pep will address that, but I think City are going to be dominant again in the second half, because toe-to-toe, they're just better than Bratislava are.
What have you seen in the pitch, just to pick up on that?
The way the wingers are trying, the crosses haven't met the target as such yet, but the fact that both of them are trying to get to the byline and trying to put those crosses in and make opportunities for Haaland and the third man run that's coming in from the midfield. And in many ways, it's nice to see, because we're used to seeing our wingers come inside, but they're doing a bit more of the other than they would normally do. And I like all the rotation. I like the spaces that Phil's popping up in, the shots that we're getting on goal, whether they're hitting the target or not. It's nice to see us shooting, because all that does is make that defender think that now if we give him that space, he's going to shoot. So we have to close it. And if they close it, that's when those cute little through balls come in where we might be able to get chances off. And I think Haaland was unlucky with one. Maybe he could have chipped it, but keeper saves it.
I think you were talking about the actual field itself, weren't you?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. You can see that when they're making some passes, sometimes it'll bobble up a little bit. And it also feels quite slick to where sometimes it's bouncing off quite quickly as well. So whereas normally you find a pass where you could just knock it 5 yards and know it's going to stay on the ground the whole time and not be too slick, I think there are one or two where the players really need to be at their sharpest, because the times when, say, you want to pass it along the ground but it bobbles up just before you. So it's not as good as, say, they would hope for. It's certainly not the Etihad. But, when they're 2-0 up and they create those opportunities and still had that passing success, as we saw with the stats, it's not too bad for now. But I'd imagine it's probably going to get worse in the second half.
Yes. I love that about the wingers, though. Very much enjoying Jeremy Doku. I love an exciting Doku run where he gets everybody on his feet, he gets everybody excited. And, of course, he had a big part to play in Phil's goal.
Yes, he sure did. And what I like about Doku as well is that he's very good at changing tempo. And if I was to be playing fullback against him, he sort of lulls you into thinking you've got things under control because he's slowed it down. But what he has in his back pocket is that he knows when he's going to speed it up again, whereas you don't. And I think you're trying to read him, but as we see with a little Doku, like, fake over the ball, yeah, it's so sharp. And by the time he's sort of planted his foot and gone, like, you've not really got time to react. But he's been very progressive on that side. I think he obviously will prefer to play on the left, but he's playing on the right, he's holding the width, and he's creating space for the likes of Foden. And when Doku's out wide, lo and behold, there's Phil Foden in the right area, and it's a magnificent finish from the star boy.
It really was. Let's talk about Matheus Nunes as well, because we noticed there that he ran the most. He worked hardest. He worked hardest in that first half. Sean, what did you make of his performance?
Getting there. I think some people don't realise sometimes when you haven't played for a while, or you're not getting the minutes that you're used to in many ways, that to play how you always used to play is hard to get up to that speed. But I think he's getting there. He's done a few nice things, but at the same time, you can see he's still missing that consistency and that match sharpness area, and that will come. The longer the game goes on, the more they give him the ball, the more he tries the things he used to do, the more it will become normal again. And I honestly think it's fine. Like I said, I quite like the way he plays, and I'm looking forward to seeing him express himself a bit more.
Yes, me too. Now, if you have missed it, if you didn't realise, I'm sure you haven't, there is a new format in the UEFA Champions League this season. And of course, it is one big league table. In fact, it is so big it will not fit in one vertical line. So we've had to split it into two. This is a live league table for you. Just to give you an update on some of the other scores tonight, Arsenal currently beating PSG 2-0 at home. Celtic are at Borussia Dortmund and are currently getting beaten 5-1, which of course is the scoreline that they beat Bratislava in the first round of matches. Barcelona are winning 3-0 at half-time as well. So there is a current live table for you at this point. Of course, the other teams play tomorrow night, Aston Villa and Liverpool, the English teams that are playing tomorrow night. City up to 5th with this as it stands. So there is 36 teams in the league table. Just to make it extra confusing, the top 8 will qualify automatically. The next 16 teams will go into a playoff, a home and away playoff, in which 8 of them will progress, and then we will have a last 16. You like the new format, Sean?
Yeah, I quite do. I think there's a bit too many teams in it, as we can see on the board. But I think if they kept the same number of teams as, say, last year's Champions League, but with this format, I think it would have panned out quite nicely. Obviously, the rules might have to be a bit different in terms of promotion and where you come out in the 8th position and so on. But I quite like the excitement it brings. I think a lot of teams that would go to away grounds would just pen in and just hope for a draw and say we'll win it back home, whereas now in certain stages of this you ain't going to be able to do that. You have to go for the win. You can't lose, put it that way, regardless of where you are.
The football boffins out there, Nedham, I'm sure you know a few of them, they predict that you're going to need a minimum of 15 points to qualify automatically. So essentially 5 wins out of 8 to get into that top 8. Obviously, we've never seen the format before, so we don't know. This is what I've read are the predictions. How are you enjoying the new format?
I do like it. I can see why some people would be a bit unsure about it because it feels so different. And I think even times gone by, like say for everyone who's just been on watching the show, like did you have to pause that to look at the tables to figure out what's going on? You know, it's quite tricky when you're seeing 2 tables of 18. I've seen like blocks of 3. There's so many ways you can do it, but it's quite hard to understand at this moment. And I think if you are just a casual observer, it can be tricky. But I think for most people watching it, you support a team or you're interested in a few teams. So you look at the sort of like, how is your team doing? Like if I ask people who is 15th at this moment in time, you probably don't know. But if in the old system, you'd know who's second in a group or whatever, because you might end up playing against them. But maybe as the tournament progresses, people understand where they're at, understand what they need to do to get to that next stage. And from when there's a chance of you finishing in the top 8, like, how important are those games to you? Like, are you a team that's in, say, 16th and you're delighted to be in 16th? Or you're a team that's 16th that should be in the top 8 because you're a number 1 seed and so on? So I think it's interesting. Quite hard to grasp because there's so many teams involved. And also from my perspective, what I find a bit harder is not knowing who other teams are going to be playing on their route towards the knockouts as well. But I think when it'll really come into its own is when, say, the bottom 12 teams are knocked out, you see the top 8, and for all people that have watched tennis, watched American sport, the seedings are there. And there's a world where number 1 will play number 2 if all the seedings go according to plan. And I think when you can see your route to the final from the moment the knockout happens, I think that's going to be clear to some, and you'll see the true benefit of the work to get to that stage.
Oh, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't even concentrated beyond the group stage, so there's a seeding.
There's a seeding. So 1 to 8 really matters. Well, I say it really matters. I believe in theory, 1 to 8, and if I'm wrong here, please someone go at Natalie's ear. It's 1 to 8 as the seedings, and then from 9 to 24, they'll play against each other in that 2-legged playoff. And then the lowest ranked team, for example, will play the highest ranked team. They'll play like number 1 and so on. And then from when those knockouts happen, in theory, 1 to 8 should get through. And then the next round is 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Why not?
Because I don't know. I like the excitement of a draw.
You do, but we also like the excitement of a path, which is why I think for the draws in previous years, like I think 2 years ago when City won it, you've got to beat Bayern Munich, you've got to beat Real Madrid, and then you'll be in the final against this team or that team. I think when you have a clear path, I think it actually becomes quite exciting as well. So you say you've got to have the draw, but maybe the excitement comes in the final match day, which everyone needs to mentally prepare themselves for now, when 18 games are going on at the same time. That will be bonkers.
I can't wait.
That will be bonkers. Think of that as it stands table for 18 games at the same time.
And you're wanting to be as high as you can to theoretically avoid...
Some teams will back themselves, but think about it this way. There's been a lot of talk about the 2 extra games mattering, like it's too much. Well, if you finish 9th to 24th, that's another 2 games on top of the 2 games. So realistically, what matters to you? So it's going to be very interesting. People should brace themselves for it.
Oh, so many things are swirling around my head because I have been so focused on this league table and avoiding those extra 2 playoff games because this is, obviously, there's 8 games already in this league stage and then there's the same number of knockout games after that. So the extra 2 games feel really important to dodge.
Yeah, especially in City's packed season as it is already, especially knowing that obviously it's after seeing that Club World Cup's coming up. But as you can see, the boys are on the way back out now, Nat.
They are, Sean. Well done. Thank you very
We've
much.
said enough. We've said enough.
You've said enough, Ned, and you've given me lots to think about. Thank you very much, as always, gents. Back over now. If you're not currently watching on the Manchester City app, you'll get the second half commentary from Alistair Mann and from Nikki Weaver. City 2-0 up at half-time. Hopefully in 45 minutes we're talking about a Manchester City victory and we can be focused on that 1-8. 1-8 only, please. Thank you very much. Enjoy the second half. Thank you very much for being here with us on Matchday Live. Over to Alistair Mann.
Thank you, Natalie. Good timing indeed, courtesy of Sean Wright Phillips' eagle eyes on the monitor. Players out. City in control. They've not quite put this game to bed, but the way that the first half went, maybe they have already put the game to bed. 2-0 up in 15 minutes, plenty of chances to add more. Not the greatest surface you've ever seen in your life, but that's really no excuse. City have been all over a beleaguered-looking Slovan Bratislava. And to put Slovan Bratislava's result into perspective, remember they lost 5-1 away at Celtic in their first game. Celtic